Here we go.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Technology for Good Hangout. This is episode number 25, quarter century already. We're trying something new today. Well, first of all, we have a guest on the show. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris Kernahan. I am a SAP mentor and a cloud architect, and I'm co-host today. Thank you for inviting me, Tom. Much appreciated.
No worries. Thanks for coming on, Chris. Again, this is your second time doing the show. You're a Tech for Good alumnus. Very good. Good to have you back.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
So I was saying we're trying something new today, and that is we're going to use a hashtag. We've had a couple of people try and leave comments before, and they've gotten lost on different places. So rather than trying to leave comments on the events page or somewhere like that, we're going to use the hashtag, and it's there underneath my name, Tech for Good, TECHFORGOOD. So if you have any comments or questions or anything you want to have thrown at us with any of the stories in the show, feel free to stick it into Twitter and give it the hashtag Tech for Good. We'll pick it up. I have my iPad here beside me, and it's on a search for Tech for Good, so I'll see it if it comes up, and we'll weave it into the show. So looking forward to your comments and questions. And with that, I think it's time to start the stories. And the first one we are going to talk about, as usual, is going to be climate-based. And it is this one, the fact that Australia has killed off its carbon tax. Now, this is hugely disappointing. And it's hugely disappointing on several fronts. I mean, Australia had set itself a 5% emissions reduction target by 2020. When you compare that to the EU's 20% emissions reduction target, a paltry 5% is just, it's not even laughable, you know, it's tragic. They were, you know, possibly likely to meet the 5% emissions reduction target with the carbon tax. Last year, 2013, they had a 0.8% reduction because of the carbon tax. It was the first time in 20 years the emissions had gone down in Australia. It was the first year of the carbon tax. I mean, it's hard to tie the two things together definitively, but like I say, it was the first time they rolled out a carbon tax, and it was the first time in 20 years emissions went down. Then you had the election in September, and the new Prime Minister, Abbott, went on a platform of repealing the carbon tax and was elected on that platform, unfortunately. So while he has now turned into one of Australia's least popular politicians and people are throwing blame his direction, he was in fact elected on a popular vote on a platform of repealing the carbon tax. So this is something that was voted on by the Australian people. It's hugely disappointing. Connie Hedegaard from the EU Commission commented on it and said it's reprehensible to see, you know, Australia sliding backwards when the rest of the world is moving forward on this. Chris, what's your take on this?
It's interesting. Australia may have got the government they deserved, but the world didn't deserve the outcome. So, as we said before, just before the hangout, they had a 0.8 reduction in their carbon emissions. When you put that against the fact that Australia was one of the few economies that didn't suffer massively during the global economic slowdown, in many respects their economy was reasonably flat. That speaks very, very well for the tax and its effects. When you look across other countries, their carbon emissions went down, but at the same time, their economies also contracted, which would have contributed to that also. So it's really, really disappointing to see, and we can't forget that Australia has a very industrialised and mining-based economy, which is one of the reasons why it didn't suffer that much. So, but those are massively polluting industries. So Australia looks as if it got the government it deserved, and the businesses got what they wanted, which, you know, doesn't really help the rest of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah. It seems in hindsight that Rupert Murdoch had a large part to play in Tony Abbott's election. Unfortunately, he's turning out to be a very industry friendly, but not people friendly prime minister. And as you say, it's got consequences for the rest of us, which is the worst part of it. You know, thanks Australia.
Yeah. Yeah. It isn't good.
Go on.
It's not good. It's it does not speak well on their stewardship. So
yeah, we'll move on to more positive stories. The first one on the renewables front is this one that I saw during the week from Microsoft. It's on the blogs.microsoft.com Firehose site, and it talks about how Microsoft have announced a 175 megawatt wind farm deal to broaden its renewable energy commitment. And this is tremendous. It's their second 20-year power purchase agreement. They announced it on Tuesday. And it's you know, as it says in the article, it's indicative of their growing commitment to renewable energy and sustainability. And if you go to their site, you know, just Google Microsoft renewables or Microsoft sustainability, and you'll come to their site, and you'll see that they have a lot of initiatives, in fact, in reducing their emissions. They've committed to going carbon neutral. And they committed to going carbon neutral in 2013. It was the first year they were carbon neutral. So last year, and I had a couple of discussions with them earlier this year on their data center and buildings portfolio, and they are 80% renewables powering their buildings and data centers. So 80% direct renewables and 20% from renewable energy certificates. So that's where they can't get the energy directly. So they buy certificates to make up for the 20% fossil fuel that comes in there. I see you've seen Tammy's comment about my not wearing the hat. Thank you, Tammy. We've one of your stories coming up later, Tammy. So, yeah, if you look at the American EPA's website, one of the things they do is they list the people who purchase renewable energy, and the largest purchaser of renewable energy in the US is Intel. I've forgotten who the second largest is. It's someone I hadn't heard of before. And the third largest purchaser of renewable energy in the US is Microsoft. So, I mean, that's a serious commitment to renewables. Google comes in at number 5, you know, 2 places underneath Microsoft. So they've come a huge distance in this. You know, Apple are in there too, obviously. If you think about cloud computing now, you know, when you look at the likes of AWS, who are the leading provider of public cloud, we've no idea what their emissions are like. Yeah. And that's got to be a supply chain risk for anyone who's thinking of hosting their stuff on Amazon, because they've no idea what's in there or what's likely to come back and bite them in the ass. And you know, investors are increasingly getting antsy about this kind of stuff. And when you've got people like Microsoft and Google putting these kind of investments into renewables, and Apple as well. Now, I know Apple is primarily a consumer play, but we'll have a chat about that in a minute. Apple have this deal now that they announced with IBM, so they could be getting into enterprise stuff as well. What do you think about all this, Chris?
I think it is fascinating to see where companies are going in terms of their own corporate responsibility and sustainability. And the fact that they invest in carbon certificates where they can't get that direct renewable really just plays to the strength and shows their commitment to it, because a lot of companies could say, well, we just can't get the renewables, so we're not going to do it. But purchasing the certificates, I think, is a good way to show how serious they are. And then you have the whole energy security argument around, especially when you come to Europe. In the States, it's not quite so bad, but when you come to Europe, where we're dependent on quite often gas supplies from Russia and stuff like that, having investment in renewables increases energy security, which increases the capability of the company and the countries. So it is interesting to see so many American companies in the top 10 of these renewable charts, but not a lot of European companies, or a lot of European-centric companies.
True enough. One of the interesting things that Microsoft are going to get out of this that may not be obvious right off the bat is because it's a 20-year power purchase agreement, or two 20-year power purchase agreements. Now this is the second one. They now have, as you say, energy security. They know the price they're going to be paying for the energy in those facilities for the next 20 years. Exactly. That's huge. That's huge.
And whenever you take that against the continuously falling price of x86 hardware and compute resources, because at the end of the day, you have to have something powering the compute resources. So if you know how much you're paying over 20 years, then you can factor that into a depreciation cycle and start to cut your prices to the bone.
Yeah. No, it's very clever. And the other thing, as I alluded to earlier, is investors are becoming increasingly sensitive to climate risks.
Yeah.
So it's a clever move again on Microsoft's part, because the smart money is getting away from fossil fuels, and that's just going to be a trend that's going to continue and continue.
So the question is, was this a move initiated by Steve Ballmer or by new CEO, whose name?
Satya
Yes.
Nadella.
Yes. So
I hear what you're saying. What I would say on that is that Rob Bernard, who's their chief sustainability guy, he's been in that position now for 6 years, and he's been pushing this kind of agenda for most of that time.
Yeah.
And the earlier power purchase agreement that they signed was while Steve Ballmer was still at the helm. So it's not something Satya has brought with him, or something that he's put in place since he's come in. So no, this is a longer term thing. I mean, it was in 2013. No, it was before 2013 they announced their intention to go carbon neutral, and in 2013 they were. Yeah. So no, this has been in train for quite a while. So Satya Nadella is making some interesting changes to the company, and we'll talk more about them in a few minutes. But this isn't one of those.
It'd be interesting to see how that commitment continues in view of what we're going to talk about now, or shortly.
Yeah, true enough. Anyway, we'll move on. And I saw this story. It was actually James Governor pinged this story to me, and I thought it was interesting. It's there's not a lot of specifics in it, and a lot of it is very what's the word I want to say? Sorry?
Nebulous, maybe.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. That's not the word I was going to use. But yeah, I think a lot of it is in the realms of, it would be great if this actually happened kind of thing. That's this word at the tip of my tongue. I've just forgotten. It'll come to me in a second. But it's this deal where IBM have a 10-year plan to help the Chinese clean up the pollution in Beijing, and they're talking about using Watson and big data and lots of analysis in it. As you said, Chris, the story is long on objectives and short on specifics and how it's actually going to achieve that. If they do achieve some of it, it'll be really interesting, because there's a huge potential there to clean up China and Beijing in particular. So even if they shift the needle a small bit, it'll be good.
I just feel sorry for Watson at times. It has to be the busiest computer ever.
Well, I guess the thing about Watson is it's a technology. It's not a device.
True.
So it's not like Big Blue. There are multiple Watsons. You just deploy a Watson, and there are cloud-based Watsons now. So it's become a platform as well. So you can spin up a Watson. And train it to do whatever you want it to do for your particular purposes. They're shoving a lot of retail around analyses of customers in the retail area, and giving customers recommendations and things like that. They're pushing it into the food arena and helping chefs come up with new recipes. They're putting it into the weather sphere and helping people in the renewables area. With predictions of weather, which is important for utilities. So it's going into a lot of different areas. Medicine is a big one. Healthcare is a huge one that they've been chasing since the very start. Hey, if they can get it to help China with its pollution as well, that'd be awesome. I see we're getting a hi there from Susan Kyohan. Don't think she's able to watch, she said, but nice that she's following us on Twitter anyway, if not on the Hangout. We'll move on to the next story. Let's see, let me fire it up here. Not as smooth as go on, you were going to say?
Both of these stories about Watson and Apple and stuff, the Microsoft Adam, is it Adam or Alan?
Adam, yeah.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how that factors against Watson and Siri and things like that. Or certainly against Watson, actually, not Siri. That's Cortana. But it's something they must actually have a look at after this. So.
Yeah. I was thinking similarly. We'll don't be jumping ahead. God Almighty. You're giving it away.
Oh God, yes, so it is. Sorry, that's line 23. Sorry, forgot about
that. Anyway, so this particular story, as I rein Chris back in, this particular story was a big one earlier in the week about IBM and Apple forging a pact around enterprise computing. So basically, big agreement between IBM and Apple, who you wouldn't have traditionally put together, but maybe that's why. And there's a couple of things that are interesting about it, and this chart tells a lot, because this chart is the penetration of iOS at the top here, iOS smartphones and iOS tablets in enterprise versus Android smartphones and Android tablets in enterprise. So the Android smartphones are a little over 20%, where the iOS smartphones are over 50%. And iOS tablets are at nearly 20%, whereas Android tablets are in the single digits. And that's counterintuitive, because most people think Android is ahead of the game. And in the consumer market it is, but not in enterprise. In enterprise, it turns out iOS is significantly ahead. So it makes a lot of sense for IBM to try and jump on the iOS coattails and glide in there. And at the same time, IBM have a lot of software which they sell to enterprise, which I guess Apple is going to try and jump on those coattails and use to get further into the enterprise space, because apart from the fact that they've got their hardware in there, Apple haven't much else in the enterprise space. And I mentioned earlier that Apple's data center, their iCloud stuff, is all consumer, really. Yeah. But with iOS 8 and the 4,000 new APIs that they're going to open up in iOS 8, and this partnership with IBM, the Apple iCloud could start to be used for a lot more than consumer stuff.
But is it the iCloud, or is it the platform that IBM want to get access to? Because it's IBM are talking about their vertical focused enterprise apps in the first part, leveraging their intellectual property and their methodologies through an iOS platform. So is it really a play around the iCloud, or is it a play around the app?
Yeah, for IBM have no interest in iCloud. IBM have got SoftLayer, and they're going to push developers to save everything into SoftLayer as opposed to iCloud.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a play for iCloud by IBM at all. But I'm using iOS 8 on my devices.
Yes.
And I have it on my tablet, and I have it on my phone. And the far deeper integration of iCloud into iOS 8 is very apparent very quickly when you start using iOS 8. That and the handoff that comes with iOS 8 as well. Yeah. So with iOS 8, the handoff is where, as you're going from your phone to your desktop machine to your tablet, if you're in the middle of composing an email, it just hands off from one to the other, and the half-composed email opens up on your desktop or opens up on your tablet or whatever it is, whichever direction you're going. And it's not just emails, it's for, this will be the APIs that are opened up, so any developer can use it, so that if you have desktop versions of an app on your phone, again, same thing will happen in either direction. So it makes the whole thing incredibly seamless.
That they would need, I can see where that integration or that partnership with IBM would need to be. I know of a number of corporate entities that don't allow iCloud to be used, even though they have iPads and they have iPhones. They don't allow the use of Siri or iCloud because they don't want their corporate data stored outside of that. Having IBM as a partner, where you could use something like SoftLayer or a more enterprise-ready cloud or perceived enterprise-ready cloud as opposed to iCloud, may be a better play. So yeah, I can see where that would go. The one thing I do find interesting is this thing about Apple Care will be tailored for enterprise deployments with support on site for IBM. Given how brand aware and brand sensitive Apple are around their support, Apple Care is poster child for really, really high end, really good customer service. So share that really customer facing with another company. Very interesting.
It is. And given some of the issues IBM has had with its service delivery in the last number of years, it's kind of a risky move on Apple's part.
That is a very risky move. That is the core of why people are so, or one of the reasons why people are so pro Apple is their customer support. I didn't take out Apple Care, but I accidentally dropped my iPhone. You take it to the Apple Store, and somebody there will do their absolute utmost to help you.
Yeah.
So very important.
The other thing about, of course, the difference between SoftLayer and iCloud as a back end for any application is that, again, similar to AWS, SoftLayer don't talk about their emissions at all, whereas iCloud is completely renewably powered.
Yeah. But is that more to do with the heritage of SoftLayer itself as I'm not going to say as a smaller player in the market, but is it just something that they could get away with because of their scale, their previous scale? Now that they're owned by IBM, there's a lot more focus upon them.
They've been owned by IBM for quite a while now.
How long is it? 2 years?
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're still not talking about their emissions.
True.
So it's disappointing. I need to blog about that and wrap them on the knuckles and see if that makes any difference.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll push on. Sticking with enterprise for a moment, we saw as well that Microsoft's relationship with Android just got less complicated, according to Ed Bott. Basically, IBM made a big announcement yesterday saying two things. They're going to lay off 18,000 people and a platform. So the 18,000 people, the vast majority of them are the people who were working on Android on Nokia phones, or now Microsoft phones. They announced a new Android phone only a few weeks back, and we talked about it on this show, but it seems they've changed their minds, and now they're dumping Android, which is not surprising. I mean, it was kind of a little odd that they were releasing an Android phone a few weeks ago when they've got their own Windows Phone operating system, which they're trying to push. Let's be fair. It's got single-digit penetration, but they're trying to increase that, and I guess helping their competitors by having an Android one wasn't making a lot of sense. So they've just bitten that bullet, axed Android and all its developers, and said, okay, we're going and we're sticking with Windows Phone.
Yeah. The one thing we've seen the mobile market being hit, especially the hardware market being hit with the Motorola sale from Google and now this from Nokia. The interesting thing that I had expected to see from the Motorola sell-off was actually other white labeled hardware platforms. There's an awful lot of very, very intelligent people, very motivated people in those businesses.
Yeah.
Will we see new handsets? Will we see new small startups with new pieces of hardware, or are they going to drift into the Internet of Things space and do interesting stuff there? I'm interested to see what comes out of the back of it. Obviously, I'm disappointed for 18,000 people are going to lose their jobs, but that may free people up to do very, very interesting things in different ways.
And that's often the case. That's often what happens with big layoffs like this. But having said that, it's still 18,000 people.
It is a lot of people.
Ouch.
I tried to find out how that has scaled, or how that has set up in the last 5 years in terms of layoffs, in terms of is it in the top 10 in terms of number or what? That's you're not going to lose 18,000 people through natural attrition.
No.
A lot of people are going to be and what are the 1.2 billion in severance packages has been set aside.
Yeah. It's pretty astounding. LinkedIn's going to get busy over the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely indeed. But at the same time, it refocuses Microsoft on where Satya is taking them. It does. It was around duplication, or so he says, but it'll be interesting to see where he takes it on from there.
Yeah, and speaking of Android, there was this nice announcement out of Google and Udacity during the week. The Udacity is one of these MOOCs, these massive open online learning platforms, and they have lots of different courses. And Google have helped them put together this course developing Android apps, Android fundamentals. And it's an online training course with several of the Google developer advocates, Reto Meyer, Dan Galpin, Catherine Kwan. They worked with a team of Udacity's developers, and they've put out this course. It's available free, so it's. I think it's an amazing resource to be putting out there, and a free one at that. It makes a ton of sense for Google, and obviously it costs Udacity nothing. They'll be paid at the back by Google, no doubt, for the bandwidth, etc. And it gets more developers into the Android ecosystem.
Well, it speaks to the web, the story 2 stories ago about IBM and Apple. When you look at the penetration in the enterprise of the Android devices, it's scarily small, and it's massively disappointing. So this can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
Trying to get more people doing it, and especially Android as a platform is phenomenal. I think it offers so much more than the iOS platform. It does. It's just
Will that change with those 4,000 plus new APIs coming out in with iOS 8? I mean, I'm asking because I don't know.
So I moved from an Apple or from an iPhone 4 to a Google Nexus 4. It took me about 6 months to get used to the way Google did things, and there were days that I hated it and could have thrown it against the wall, but it was a beautiful handset and I loved it. And then I've moved back to an iPhone 5S, and I'm the restrictiveness of the platform drives me nuts. But the one place where it kills me more than anything else is I hate that iOS keyboard. I absolutely hate and despise it.
Well, in that case, you're going to love iOS 8.
Exactly. So will those 4,000 APIs make life easier? Yes, they will. And for me, from a selfish point of view, getting that Swift keyboard where I can swipe is just going to make my life easier. So
yeah, I've been using the new keyboard because I've installed iOS 8 on my device.
Yeah.
And the predictive keyboard that they have is amazing. It's really, really amazing. I'm surprised at how good it is. I have it on my tablet and I have it on my phone, and when I'm typing, it knows before I know what it is I'm going to say next. It's spooky. It really is. The difficult thing about it is if you're a touch typist, you won't see it. You turn it off, and you can turn it off. You can just swipe it down, and get rid of it. That's not a problem. But I'm not a touch typist. I'm a hunt and peck. So it's no problem for me to lift a finger and just peck at the word instead of looking for the next letter. So it makes typing a lot faster.
I've always liked the iPad keyboard. I've always been able to type very quickly on the iPad keyboard. The iPhone keyboard is where I have the problem, and the predictive text would be very, very useful.
It's very good. It's very good.
That's going to be good. But in terms of this, getting people into Android development for the Internet of Things, for the wearables, for the Android platform, it can only be a good thing, and hopefully reverse some of the iOS first policies that so many companies seem to have.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
We'll keep going. And Dropbox has changed its desktop client with streaming synchronization. So it's now up to, it says, twice as fast. Although when you look at the graphs down lower in the article, you'd have to have a pretty big file to get it up to twice as fast. But it means basically the way it used to work was when you dropped a file into your Dropbox folder, it would copy the file up and then distribute it to any other Dropbox devices you had. Whereas now, what happens is as soon as it starts going up, it starts going back down again. And it does automatic synchronization at the server level on the Dropbox servers. So it does streaming from the server to all your devices. So it's able to do it faster, just not to wait for the file to go all the way up before it starts going back down again. So that's it really. That's a short story.
I don't know how useful that would be.
I think it's very useful. It's hugely useful for me because I move large files reasonably regularly, and video files and things like that. And
special,
sorry?
You're special.
I'm special. In the best possible sense.
Oh, yeah.
So the video files that I move, they can be over a gigabyte in size very easily, and the speed of connectivity that I have where I live is appalling. It's 600k up, which is brutal. It's brutally slow. So getting a 1 or 2 gig file anywhere is desperately slow. I have Backblaze, the online backup application, really, really good application. But I have a couple of terabytes on my hard disk. So if I left my computer on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, my computer might be completely backed up to Backblaze after about 9 months.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So, it's constantly there at around, okay, we've got about 20% backed up now, we've got about 25% backed up now, and it's just, and I have to turn it off anytime I want to upload anything. So it's yeah. So that's not a problem with Backblaze. That's a problem with the internet connectivity where I am in Spain. It's just it makes me mad.
We'll not press you. We'll not press you to name and shame.
Movistar. The incompetent wankers.
Listen, at least it's not as bad as Comcast.
That was fun, wasn't it?
The phone call. Jeez.
Yeah.
I don't know who I felt more sorry for, because obviously as a customer retention agent, he wants to keep people, and he wasn't being rude specifically, but he did badger and overly pressurize the guy who was on the phone, and I feel sorry for both of them. I really do.
So they I mean, those call center agents obviously have KPIs.
Yeah.
Don't let the person. The guy that he was talking to.
He was a blogger and things like that, wasn't he? He was a
AOL. Yeah, he was. But the Comcast guy was from the arm of Comcast that deals with people who want to cancel.
Yes.
When you ring up and say, I want to cancel, you're put through to the cancellations service. And the people in that service are they're trained, and they have KPIs around turning you around and not letting you leave, but signing you up to something else instead. And that's what the guy was doing. He was doing his job, and he was answering to his KPIs.
Yeah.
And he got beaten over the head for it. Now, he wasn't named, which was good. Comcast took a lot of heat for it, which is right, but he was put on an administrative leave, according to Comcast afterwards. And I've no doubt he was just doing what he was told to do.
Yeah, no, Comcast pretty much hung him out to dry. Although, as you say, they did name him, which was good. So they could have done a lot worse. So, but anyway, the next one.
Next one. I see Tammy there is quoting my LinkedIn will be busy over the next few weeks on Twitter.
I have favorited that one.
Okay, we'll move on. So, Nest and Samsung have launched Thread, a wireless mesh standard for the smart home. And this is a new networking protocol, basically, for Internet of Things. And, there's a number of them there already. There's Zigbee, there's Z-Wave, there's boring old Wi-Fi, there's Bluetooth. And this one now, Samsung, ARM, Nest, and 4 other companies have gotten together to build a new radio standard for the smart home called Thread. It's low power, and it uses existing radio hardware, which can be used by Zigbee, which means that a company could update Zigbee devices to support Thread with software if it chooses. So you don't need new radios to do it. You can do it with existing hardware. But how necessary actually is it? I mean, do we need another networking protocol for Internet of Things? It's hard to know. Zigbee is out there, and it's in a lot of devices already. There are problems with interoperability between Zigbee devices, which is, it speaks to problems with the Zigbee community. Building out a whole new protocol is, I don't know how good an idea it is. I think fixing Zigbee might be a better idea, because the only real advantage I think this has over Zigbee is the fact that it doesn't have interoperability problems. Yeah. It's going to take a year or more for this to have any kind of penetration at all. So I think, yeah. Well, I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
I think on the previous Tech for Good that we did, we talked about a similar protocol which was backed by one of the UK's biggest radio operators, and that was fine. The interesting thing is that I think looking at the companies that are backing it is more interesting than the protocol itself. and
True.
that is the fact.
Google and Samsung, basically.
Arm actually
ARM as well. Yeah.
most is the fact that ARM's going to actually build the chips. ARM could actually put the functionality in their ASICs or in the stuff that they're building at the moment. And ARM is the largest chip licensor on the planet. So
Right.
to have ARM in the fold is a very interesting play. And then you've got Nest and Google and Samsung as well. So I think it has legs. It depends whether they open source it and keep it open and make it a standard. If you end up with them playing, all you need is one of them to turn around and go, I'm taking the ball and I'm going home,
Yeah.
and it falls apart. So if it works, it'll work really well. It's a low power mesh network, and it supports IP version 6, which Zigbee doesn't at the moment, I think. So
Yeah. I'm not sure on that. I've heard some people say Zigbee does, and others say it doesn't. It may depend on versions. I'm not sure. I've lined up a call with Toby Richardson, who chairs Zigbee, to talk about this next week. So hopefully we'll know more next week by the next show.
Yeah, the other place that Zigbee has it is Z-Wave, the other standard, is controlled by a company.
That's right. It's proprietary.
Yeah, it's proprietary, and I think a lot of the other ones are proprietary as well. So as I said, if all the companies can play nice and get a standard and actually make it a standard, I like it. It's something that we need desperately.
And I mean, and I'm about to get a plug in here. This is obviously a networking protocol for the Internet of Things, the device-to-device communications that we have in home. And this is my ThingMonk T-shirt that I'm sporting today.
It only took you 40 minutes.
And I gotta say, ThingMonk is the RedMonk Internet of Things conference that we had last year in December in London, and we have it again this September, 9th or 10th of September, or 9th and 10th of September, I think it is, in Denver in Colorado. So keep an eye out for that. It should be good. And we'll have another one again in December in London. So we'll have two of them this year, September 9th, 10th in Colorado, and then back in London again in December. So we'll move on. We still have another Internet of Things story to throw in there. And it's this one, and this is less a news piece and more kind of an opinion piece, I guess. It talks about the Internet of Things for seniors, for senior citizens, and it's written from a U.S. perspective, as a lot of these stories are. And it talks about how the population of Americans 65 and older is going to double to reach 80 million by 2050, and so on, or even just 28 million by 2025. And you have similar figures here in Europe. The last figures I saw in Europe were saying that for people in Europe who are over the age of 65 and living alone, they make up something like 20% of the households, which is huge. Yeah. And a lot of those people, they call it aging in place. This is where people want to grow old in their own home. Nothing too shocking or unusual about that, but what this story is about is the fact that of these people who want to live at home as long as they can, there are potentially things in the Internet of Things which can help them do so. And it talks about some of the things like the wearable devices which can connect to phones and let people know if people fall down. But it also talks about something that we talked about here on this show a couple of weeks back, this thing called Lively. It's a company that makes devices that stick to like doors and fridges and windows and things like that, and it's kind of a low impact way that relatives can track to make sure that stuff is happening in this older person's home. It's not that they're installing cameras and watching them to make sure they're there, which is a little more intrusive. But it's just if if you're a relative of someone who's older and you're allowed access to this by that person, then you get to see, okay, the door opened to the fridge this morning. So okay, they got up, they opened the fridge, great, everything is hunky dory. And that's just one solution for people who are living at home. There's things like Dropcam as well, which does the camera thing, and there's door sensors and things like that as well. And there's even sensors for medication to make sure you want to make sure that people are taking their medication, things like that.
Yeah.
So there's lots of, people talk about use cases for the Internet of Things, and there's lots of use cases in industry, tracking turbines and all that kind of thing. There's lots of use cases in the home as well, where you're tracking energy use, and you're turning your lights on and off from your phone, and really important stuff like that. But you don't hear about something like this very often, and something like this is actually a really important use case for the Internet of Things. It's where you're allowing people to have independence and live at home longer than they might have been able to before.
I think it's one of those ones that I think is absolutely fascinating and very, very brilliant, and it follows from you have the seniors, and then you have telemetry, remote monitoring of babies and stuff like that as well. So I read during the week, and this is why this is actually quite interesting, about parents are becoming paranoid and using so much technology to monitor their children, okay, and not letting them grow up and all the rest. So, like, even I have a pressure sensor on my daughter's cot, so we can. It beeps every time she moves, and when she stops moving for any period of time, an alarm potentially can go off. So quite often I would lift her out at night and forget to turn the thing off, and a couple of 10 seconds later, my alarm going off, and my wife is now awake and very annoyed at me. But on the flip side of that, for the seniors, actually, it could just be absolutely fabulous. The one place where I would actually be wary of it is actually using it as a substitute for personal time with the senior members of your family, using it as a surrogate.
Sure.
That would, we all live very busy lives and things, and having those tools and going, yeah, I know mum's okay, or I know dad's okay, I don't really need to call in.
Yeah.
That's what it would worry me.
That's a fair concern. We're referred to as the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
Where we have young kids and we have older parents to be thinking about. In my case, my dad lives in Ireland. My only sibling lives in Texas. Yeah. So with me based in Spain, I'm the closest offspring to my dad, who's living alone. So something like this would be, again, I'm special. I know. Hey.
Yeah. But in your case, that it would be absolutely fabulous, because there would be ways for you to communicate and check on your father and things, and initiate. I think one of the things I saw was you could initiate a video conference or a telephone call without the other person having to pick up. So that would be brilliant as well. So I really like the senior aspect of it. I query, obviously some of those will carry forward into the junior side of it. I just think that's going a bit far. So yeah. I like it.
Cool. The next story is it's a bit less important, a little more frivolous, I guess. It's a thing called Gotenna, which is a messaging gadget that'll apparently work in the middle of nowhere. It uses low band frequencies. It's a little antenna that you can put onto your backpack or whatever. There's a little video on the bottom here. Let's scroll down. Oh, by the way, that's a picture of the inventor, the woman on the right there, whose name has just come out of my head for a second. Daniela, thank you. Yes, there it is. Daniela Perdomo is the co-founder and CEO of the company that makes Gotenna. And from what you read in the article, she's quite heavily involved in the design as well, which is nice to see. But yeah, there's this little video down here. About the use cases for it, and basically the use cases that they talk about would be use cases where you might be at a concert where there's very little connectivity, or you might be in the middle of the countryside, in a forest or in the mountains or something where there's very little connectivity, and this is a way where you can get connectivity. It uses a particular band, so it's not like 3G or something like that. It's not high bandwidth. It's very low bandwidth, and it's a messaging app, so you can send messages directly to people using it. And you can send GPS coordinates, so you can call up your map and see where they are or where you are, send them where you are, whatever. So it's got a very specific use cases, I guess. I can see how it would be useful in those scenarios, but wide appeal, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, you have me at a bit of a disadvantage because it's not on my list of links here. But
sorry about that.
No, don't worry. Is it a mesh network or is it just a peer-to-peer?
It's a mesh.
It's a mesh network. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Where would I actually see it being quite useful is. It's not actually in urban areas or anything like that. It's actually it's out in the country and that sort of stuff. So where you have,
and it can go from miles in the country, up to 30 miles, or if you're up a mountain, it's line of sight. So if you're up a mountain, it'll go 50 miles apparently.
So that would have been very, very helpful for me about 3 months ago when I was out walking with a friend of mine, and we were doing a linear route, not a circular route, and we parked the car at one side of the Mourne Mountains and we went to the other side of the Mourne Mountains, and I managed to leave my car key for my car on the other side back in the thing. And I couldn't get a signal to ring Lorna to come and get us because I was actually had to walk the whole way back again. So yeah, it would have been very useful then. Although we only found out about 3/4 of the way through, so we didn't have to walk all the way back. But okay, I still have to buy the beer for being so stupid.
We just found the perfect use case. Tremendous.
Exactly. Stopping me from buying around. Yay!
We'll move on, and Jawbone. We're in the wearables kind of area now, I guess. Jawbone have got this new Up app, which is supposed to make healthy eating a whole lot easier. And basically, what they've done with the new app is they've just added a whole load of data into it. So now, for example, if you go to Chipotle or Starbucks, they already have the menu in there. So if it knows you're there, it makes it far easier to populate what it is you're actually eating. And they're crowdsourcing lots of other smaller restaurants and their menus. If you put in things like a bagel, it'll automatically come up with suggestions like cheese or something like that as well, or coffee as well. So it's basically the difficulty with tracking eating.
Yeah.
With any of these wearable devices is the difficulty of the data entry, and that's a problem they're trying to solve by making it far more intuitive and coming up with suggestions, predicting what it is you might be actually eating. They take it a bit further as well by suggesting, giving you scores on what it is you're actually eating, and so helping you and directing you in towards healthier eating, and and coming up with suggested diets as well. So it's not just the tracking side of things, but also suggestions on more healthy eating. So that seems quite good.
Well, on the pure tracking side of it, I would say I'm extremely disappointed for the very simple reason that there are larger databases of brand food out there in tracking websites. I think Fitness Tracker and stuff like that. What's the Fitbit? So some of the tracking websites, third-party websites aligned with Fitbit, have all that functionality. Where when I was spending a lot of time away, I would say I got room service in a Hilton, and they would have the room service menu, so I could put in what I actually had. So the tracking part of it, the GPS and linking it lowers the friction massively.
Yeah.
But it's that recommendation engine, I think, is the killer app there. the recommendation engine is much better, because if you can tie, I'm in a Starbucks and I'm about to buy this, and have the engine turn around and go, you know what, the sushi's a lot tastier, and so that to me actually is the recommendation engine, the killer there, not the.
I can see people like Starbucks coming in on the back end and offering discounts at the same time as well.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just glad they got the up actually back out again, and in a better format than it was previously.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see what comes out with on the Apple ecosystem, because sure, I've got the Force, and I really like it. It does really well, but they've started to open up the Health app on iOS 8.
Yeah.
So it's tracking now my steps and coffee consumption and things like that, and they're going to start opening up more with the next beta, which will be out on Tuesday. So I'm going to enjoy trying that out and seeing what's coming with that. We'll plow on because we're close to the top of the hour.
Yeah, all
right. We don't have much left to talk about. 2 stories left I want to talk about. One, and we alluded to it earlier, accidentally, and it's how Microsoft have come up with this thing called Project Adam. And basically, Project Adam is a bit like IBM's Watson. It's this cognitive computing engine. Basically, it's Microsoft's play in the AI space. And if you read the article, it's all singing, it's all dancing, it's very fast, it recognizes dogs, yada yada. I think until they take the IBM route of turning it into a platform and opening up APIs to it, it's going to have very limited appeal. Yeah. But I think by going that route, I think that was a clever route on IBM's part, and I think if Microsoft go that route as well, then it'll start to get legs.
Yeah. The interesting thing, I was reading the write-up on it. It is the computing network is asynchronous. It's not synchronous, which is different to a lot of the other AI architectures, but it makes it much. The AI engine, the learning engine, because it's asynchronous, has to learn from mistakes much more effectively. So it does, or a lack of data. So that is, in terms of the technical achievement that they've managed, is absolutely huge. But I think technical achievement's one thing, but actually getting people to use it is completely different. So yes, they need the APIs, they need the platform, they need to expose it and let it do what it was supposed, or let it out and explore.
And let get people building apps on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be very interesting.
Okay. The last story we're going to talk about today, and this is all Tammy's fault. It was Tammy who shared this story with me during the week, and it's about poo. It's about turning your poo into energy. Basically, this Blue Plains Advanced Wastewater Treatment Plant in the southeast in the U.S. in Washington, they're taking your solids, to put it politely, and turning it into energy.
Yep.
They use massive digesters, and they convert waste into energy. They basically are, they're going to produce about 10 megawatts of power, enough to provide energy to 8,000 homes simultaneously. Chris, you had an interesting take on this.
Yeah, it was more to do with the fact that as a consumer, I'm paying
a consumer of poo.
Well, no, not a consumer of services. So I think at some point some enterprising soul is going to sue the water company or Blue Plains for using their poop without their express permission. And we'll get into an entire rabbit hole of stupid legal arguments about is my poop better at producing energy than your poop, and should I get paid more money for it or whatever? So it just strikes me this is so possible in the US. So I think it is hilarious. But on the plus side, when you actually look at what they're doing with it in terms of how they're reusing it,
Yeah.
both in terms of energy and then taking what is left and shipping that back to farmers as fertilizer, it really does close the loop, and it is a very, very interesting and very useful thing. I just, the utility company, the water company, they are getting paid on both sides, because you're paying them for the water and waste services, and then they're getting paid by Blue Plains to take the waste away. So the big winner there is the water company.
That might be why Tammy liked it so much.
Pardon?
That might be why Tammy liked it so much.
Well, yes, Tammy working for a water company, but it also cycles back into the story at the top from Australia, where it does close the loop. It does. It creates energy. It takes. The waste products go further back into the food into the food cycle. So I think it's a good story. It's a very good story. So yeah, fair play to them.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. Okay, we're right at the top of the hour, and we finished just in the nick of time, or just a little over the nick of time, a nick and a half. Thanks everyone for your interest. Chris, thanks for co-hosting the show with me this week. It was great, as usual. And we'll be back next week, and the guest next week is, I don't know if I should say it, he's from a very big cloud company. We'll put it that way. Okay, we'll see you all same time next week. Thanks again.
Cheers. Bye.